Hey, what's up, guys? This is TJ Lavin. You're listening to The Expansion Project with my friend Fat Tony.
Welcome to The Expansion Project. This is episode number 20, and I am your host, Fat Tony. On this show, I have casual yet deep conversations with professional athletes, entrepreneurs, authors, investors, bloggers, and anybody else that I deem to be successful in hopes of expanding my mind and yours while motivating and inspiring people along the way. My guest today is a very close friend of mine. He's a professional flatland BMX rider named Terry Adams. Now, Terry and I grew up about an hour apart in small towns from Louisiana, but we didn't really connect until much later, which we'll talk about as I intro him on the show. Terry was homeschooled and dyslexic as a kid and started riding in pro BMX contests at the age of 16. He won 2 NORA Cup, which is Ride BMX Magazine's #1 Rider of the Year awards. He's won X Games gold medal and tons of other competitions all around the world. He's been on the cover of and in the pages of all the major BMX magazines in various countries. He had a Flick Trix signature bike, so that was like a little toy bike that you could pick up in Walmart and KB Toys and stuff. That was a replica of his bike. And he's definitely one of the most successful flatland riders of all time. And if you're not super familiar with BMX, flatland is kind of a niche within the niche sport of BMX. And currently, he is one of, if not the only, flatland riders in the United States making a living just from his sponsorship endorsements. Terry had a documentary made about his life called Dreams, which we are going to talk a lot about dreams and goals. And one of the things that he wanted me to mention is the Ellen DeGeneres show. He had set a goal to be on the Ellen show, and it wasn't all about just being on the show. It was about the idea of setting a goal and being persistent about it and making that come to life. In addition to the Ellen show, he was also on Glee and a couple other television shows as well. Over the past couple of years, though, Terry has gotten really into real estate investing, and now he has a business partner who is his property manager and also my property manager for the 2 properties I have out there in his area. And him and his partner are killing it together. They've been acquiring properties left and right, and they have big plans to keep expanding very quickly, and they're not slowing down at all. On this episode, we talked, like I said, a lot about dreams and goals. We talked a lot about his real estate investments and sort of where he started from and where he came from. We also talked about how he shifted his mindset in order to start on the path of where he's at now. Again, he's very successful not only in his riding career, but also his investing career as well. So it was super interesting to hear from him on how that journey sort of started. I think what you're going to take away from this show is that you can set goals and make anything happen. And Terry is living proof of that in every sense of the word. And I think you're going to really be inspired just by his drive and his passion and his determination. Before I jump on FaceTime with Terry, I want to thank everyone out there for their continued support and all the great feedback. It keeps flowing in, and I really, really appreciate it. It seriously means a lot to me. With that said, if you want to help out and tell other people what you think about the show, please go to the iTunes page, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. That review is going to help bump up the show, which is going to help out everybody. Also, go to Nutrisuma.com and use the promo code FATTONY1 for 20% off. Nutrisuma is a great company out of Arizona. They make all their supplements and proteins here in the U.S. and Arizona. I use their creatine, which I've seen some really good gains in my muscle mass from that. I also use their amino acids, which help me recover after workouts. And I use their delicious vegan-friendly pea protein. And now here is the man of the hour, Terry Adams. We've been trying to have this conversation now for a couple of months, and our schedule just could not line up. So I appreciate you finally freeing up some time when I was free today to jump on FaceTime with me.
No problem, man. I'm sorry that it took so long to nail me down.
No worries, man. We're both busy people. So before we jump into the business end of this interview, I want to tell people a little bit how we got connected. Because I knew about you when I was, a kid, probably, in high school, early high school. I just knew that there was a pro flatlander in the area just because we lived relatively close. But we didn't really connect until college. And in college, we briefly got connected through a couple of the events that I put on that you attended. But we still never really became friends until after I graduated college, which is pretty interesting. So I just want to tell people, when I graduated college, I had about a 6-month period of time where I was kind of just chilling with no job and no school before I moved to California to work at Ride BMX Magazine. And one of the first things I did during that downtime was I cold called you. You know, I had your number, but we never hung out or anything. And I called you. I remember exactly where I was at in my girlfriend's apartment at the time. I was sitting on her stairs, and I was like so nervous to call you. And I called, and I was like, hey, you know, I've got free time. I want to try to do photos and submit them to different magazines. Do you want to try to do an interview for Ride UK? And I remember you just being like, yeah, I don't have a work or school either. Like, this is what I do. Like, let's do it. Like, this is all I do. And so we spent about 10 days shooting photos together for this interview for Ride BMX Magazine. So that was when we really got connected and started to become friends.
Yeah.
So pretty soon after that, we both started writing down annual goals. You know, we became pretty good friends. And in 2007, after I talked to who is now my financial mentor, after the first time I talked to him, you and I both sat down with a little black notebook. We might have even bought the notebook together at the same time from Hobby Lobby or something. But we sat down in your old trailer and we started writing down our annual goals. And every year for the next couple of years, we did this together. We would meet up at PJ's Coffee Shop, which coincidentally you're actually living right by there now. But we started writing down annual goals, and we're going to talk a lot about goals during this interview. And, you know, we've both come a very long way since 2007 when we started with those goals. You know, you're out of the trailer. You've, you know, bought a brand new house that you lived in for a couple of years, and now you're in the middle of building a new dream home. So tell me a little bit about that and get me caught up of where you're living right now, where you're walking around right now as we're talking.
Yeah, I am pacing around because that's where I do my best talking on I can't imagine just sitting down in one spot talking on the phone. That absolutely freaks me out. But right now I am living downtown Hammond. Hammond's the city that I grew up in, and we have like a little downtown area that's got like 3 streets, and it was kind of a little dream of ours to, when we do build our dream home, to kind of see what it was like to kind of live that downtown life. So it was just kind of another little goal to kind of check off to be down here where we're at right now.
Yes, I was down in Louisiana not too terribly long ago, about a month ago or so, and got to go into your house that's being built. How's that coming along?
We're probably about 4 months out, I would say, but it's hard to tell. As much as it's raining and stuff, it kind of slows those guys down. So
gotcha. So let's go on to the business end of this conversation. Oh, well, actually, before I start, do you have any, of those early memories of us kind of writing goals together and stuff? Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I will say this, that phone call that you said you were afraid to call me on, I had also heard of a guy named Fat Tony, and I had this vision of you in my head that you were this big fat guy, and the way I pictured you was that guy that does that TV show now that has like the blonde tips that
like Guy Fieri or something.
Yeah, he like talks about food and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like, I thought that you looked like that, but with a way bigger belly. So the first time I went to your event, you and Brock's event, or I guess it was a collaboration of all you guys. Like, when I went to that event for the first time, I was looking all around, because I think the first time I didn't even talk to you, but I looked all around for a big fat guy because I was going to go up and like introduce myself to you. But
that's funny, man.
Never found you.
That's funny. Cool. So let's start in the beginnings. I like to talk to people that don't have, 9-to-5 type jobs, which is something that you absolutely don't have. And maybe I never mentioned this on the show, so I'll go ahead and throw this out there. I think for me, part of the draw to working for myself or not having a 9-to-5 job is I spent so many years traveling around with and hanging out with professional BMX riders that never had jobs. So I looked at guys like you and your life and how you created your life and just had all this free time and flexibility and just freedom. And I was like, I want that. I see all these people that have figured out a way to make it happen with something they're passionate about, like riding, and I want a part of that. So with that said, have you ever had a regular job of any kind?
I did. I worked at a bike shop when I was like 15 years old. Well, maybe like actually 13 to 15 years old. I was like kind of working underage, just kind of helping out. And then there was a time in my BMX career where things kind of took a turn to where I was kind of at a standstill. And I think I was around 16 years old, like right when you're able to start working, 16, 17. And I had to go and get a job working at a paper factory because my mom just said, you have to start doing something. The money that you're making from riding isn't bringing in enough income. And I don't remember at the time, but it must have been hardly no income. I was maybe just kind of surviving off contest winnings at the time. But that job lasted about a week because it kind of freaked me out so much. It turned into me, it turned into me like being like a flag guy on the side of the road, like that like directs traffic as like people are working on the road. And I was like sitting on the back of a truck eating lunch with like these guys that were like 55, 60 years old. And that was their job. And I just like was sitting there one day realizing like, this is totally not what I want to do. So either I got to make riding work as a job, as a living, or I have to go back to college. So I actually went home one night and emailed one of the companies that I rode for. It was Aries Bikes out of Japan. I emailed the owner and I said, look, this is the deal. Either I'm going to have to like really slow down with riding, or I'm going to have to get some financial support here. And that next morning he like wired me enough money to quit my job. And kind of from that point on, I really took riding as a job really serious, and kind of switched over from just being like a guy that rode my bike a lot and tried to learn tricks to a guy that focused more on the business side of things with riding, because I never wanted to take that part for granted, because I knew what it would feel like if I had to like go back to working on the side of the road, how that felt. I didn't want to ever feel that again. So I knew like I really got to, get my game tight with the sponsors that I acquire and how I keep them.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that's kind of leading into my next question, which was, was it important for you from the early days to not have a job, and why was that important? Was that just important because you wanted to be a rider so bad, or was it important because you just really felt like that wasn't your personality type to have a job like that?
I guess, to be honest, I was just super obsessed with riding flatland, as all younger kids that get into flatland, they have an obsession, and that's what it was to me. So as I was out riding and learning these tricks and sitting out in the parking lot 8 hours a day, I really didn't realize what I was doing at the time. It was kind of like the VHS era. Magazines were really popular before DVDs came in, and as I was riding a lot and kind of building traction, I guess, for my name as a rider, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was kind of building a foundation for what I have today, which is the name that I built to allow me to have the sponsors that I have. So I guess to kind of sum that up, I kind of went off on a little rant there, but I didn't really realize that all that riding was and all the dedication I was putting into riding was gonna, inadvertently, help me get where I'm at today. Mm-hmm. So the day I realized that, I could actually make a money from riding my bike and make a decent living is when I started taking that part more serious.
Yeah. So, you said you got some money from Aries pretty early on, and you were doing some contests and stuff. I think back then there was probably a little bit more money in the flatland contest circuit because there was X Games and the BS contest series and stuff. Whereas right now there's very little money in contests. So in those early days, you said you got the one sponsor from Aries, but I would imagine that's still not really enough to live on. So how did you get by in those early days without after you quit that job?
I acquired a couple more sponsors. I believe I rode for Diatech. I had a small clothing company that sponsored me. There was Aries, and then shortly after that, I picked up Red Bull. I think I was 18, 19 years old, and it was kind of the end of the X Games era when they kind of picked me up. And in that era, I wasn't the best contest rider. I was getting invites to the X Games, but I was coming in. There would be 18 people invited, and I was sitting in anywhere between 16th and 18th place.
Mm-hmm. So how long have you been on Red Bull now?
A good 11 years, I believe, 11, 12 years.
Wow, that's awesome. So as a pro rider now, 2015, where do your different income streams come from on the riding side of things?
On the riding side of things?
Yeah, so you've got your sponsor salaries, right? You've got some contest winnings, I assume, still these days. You've had some signature bike parts, right? You got demos, magazine incentives. Can you break down on kind of which one of those maybe pays the most or pays the least?
It's hard to say, man. Every year's kind of different. Kind of working for yourself, being a rider, but kind of like you said, there's a fraction of my income that just comes from a base salary. There's another fraction of that income that comes from doing demos and appearances, and then there's another small fraction of that income that comes from royalty incentives and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So this year, do you know which kind of piece of that pie is the largest? Is it the base salaries, or is it the royalties or demos?
I would say it's always from the just the sponsor agreements that I have through through that income.
Yeah, so that's one of the really cool things about you is that you've marketed yourself and you've done the business side of this thing so well that you're able to do that because I don't think there's really anybody else in the U.S. that's doing that. There's a handful of guys that ride flatland that do demos and basically put on shows on a regular basis through different companies, but not necessarily a sponsor. And so you're unique in that you're in this kind of niche of flatland within BMX, and you're still able to get by on your sponsor money. So I think that's awesome, and everybody can kind of draw some inspiration and motivation from that, I think.
Yeah, I think the reason that was able to happen for me is because early on I realized early on that I needed to promote myself as just a BMX rider and not a flatland rider, because obviously flatland is such a niche little market that I kind of realized that it didn't really matter how small or big flatland was. If I could get that company's logo on the front of the same site that everyone else is on, or in the same magazine that everyone else is in, it didn't really matter what discipline I was riding. As long as I was getting that company's logos out there, it almost became an obsession to me to show those companies that my worth was just as much as the other BMX guy, no matter what type of riding I was doing.
Mm-hmm. So, I didn't have this question written down, but that brings up a good point. Is you're kind of a obsessive personality type. You went on the Ellen show, not necessarily, just because you wanted to be on Ellen, but because you wanted to sort of prove to yourself that if you are persistent enough with staying on top of things enough, that you could do it. And you want to prove to these companies that you're worthy of getting on these magazines and stuff. So, can you talk a little bit on sort of that obsessive or persistent personality type or mindset that you have?
I guess it started with the riding stuff. It started like in the early 2000s. Is that I just kind of I was writing down goals in the late 90s, but in the early 2000s when I started writing down goals, it was like it was like trick goals, like what tricks I would want to do or what combos I would want to do for that year, and obviously at the end of the year or 6 months into it, I would wind up checking those tricks off. And then as my riding kind of progressed and I kind of progressed as a person, those goals that I was writing down started to become more based on sponsor goals. You know, like I want to acquire 2 or 3 more sponsors this year, or I want to make sure I get a raise from this sponsor and this sponsor, or, you know, those goals kind of became more oriented to the business side of riding. And so a couple of those goals that were written down in those early days was like getting the cover of Ride Magazine. So I kind of knew that like I could, from checking off all those tricks that were so hard in the beginning in the late 90s to the early 2000s, I kind of knew if I could make any of that stuff happen, then getting the cover of a magazine probably wouldn't be too hard. So that was like one of the goals I had. So after I did have that goal to get on the cover of Ride, and I got it through like a lot of persistence and, you know, believing that I could do it, then I kind of took that mindset and said, hey, if I can get on the cover of Ride, then I can get on the cover of Plus. And if I can get on the cover of Plus, then I can just write down a goal that I can be on the cover of Cream, and it's going to happen. And then, hell, like I love watching the Ellen show. Like, let me write that down as a goal, and let me see how long it takes that to happen. So it all just really came this obsession of like knowing that if I wrote it down and knowing that if I visualized it, I could pretty much make it happen, because there was very few things that I wrote down that I wasn't able to accomplish.
Interesting. So let's talk about your financial journey. And, you know, obviously you and I talk about this kind of stuff all the time. And, you know, to the listeners out there, you guys should know that for me personally, Terry is, you know, one of the biggest, you know, motivations and inspirations in my financial journey, and someone that I talked on a very regular basis about this kind of thing, whether it be business ideas or, you know, specific investing, you know, strategies and stuff like that. So Terry, I'd like to know, you know, I know that you didn't grow up around a lot of money and your family didn't necessarily have a lot of money. So where do you feel like your financial journey started?
It started from a book. And it was it's kind of a kooky name, and I hate even saying it on here, but it's The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and the author of the book was T. Harv I can believe his last name is Ecker. But Ecker. Okay, Bobby Carter referred me to that book, and I liked it because it was a very simple read, and it was the whole book was kind of based on showing individuals how to change their mindset on how they think about money. And it was so intriguing to me because as I was reading the book, I realized that everything that I wasn't doing with money was the things that I was supposed to be doing. So that's why it kind of hit me so hard, that book, was because I realized that I was doing everything wrong. So I needed to kind of really change the way I thought about the way I made my money and what I did with my money after I made it to create more.
Mm-hmm. So this is for the listeners out there. I've talked about this book more than a couple times on this show, and if you're new to the show, I'll go ahead and give you a very brief synopsis. This is a book that I recommend to seriously every single person. I think anybody that reads this can gain something from it. Again, it's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker, and I'll have a link to that so you can check it out on Amazon in the show notes on the show's website. But the book is broken into 2 parts, and the first half of it is basically like a self-analysis or a kind of a personal psychology type of thing where it helps you break down how and why you think about money, how you think about money and what your mindset is about money, and then also why it is that way. Because the theory is that, you know, you don't come out of the womb knowing anything about money, so whatever you know at this point in your life, you've learned from somewhere along the way. So if you can sort of unlearn that and start from scratch and learn how, you know, quote unquote rich people think, then you can recondition your mindset to become rich yourself. Again, that's a very brief synopsis of it, but the second part of the book is broken into 17 different ways of how rich people think differently than poor people. And of course, rich and poor are very broad statements and just to make a point. But, you know, Terry said he got a lot out of this book, and actually Terry's referral of that book to me, who came through a referral from Bobby Carter, a mutual friend of ours, that is really what started my financial journey as well. So this book had a big impact on both of our lives. Now, moving along, Terry, so people typically accumulate wealth through a few different ways, through stocks or mutual funds or paper investments like that, or through businesses or through real estate. That's kind of the three main ways that people get wealthy, aside from inheriting money. So why did you pick real estate specifically to start with?
Well, first off, real quick, I want to go back to that book real
Sure.
quick. I keep a copy, like extra copies of that book in case I come across someone that has interest in learning about how to build wealth, or just how to be a little bit smarter with their money in general. And I stand by that book that much, where I keep a couple copies of it and go through and highlight some of the things that changed my life, and I'll just hand it off to those people, and in hopes that it'll do the same for them as what it did for me. Because when I say it changed my life, it really, really did.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I haven't kept copies on hand. I've for sure bought more than a couple copies and given them to people. But I might do that, man. After we get off this podcast, I might just order a handful of copies and start giving them to people. Because you're right, man. It changed my life as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you got to pick the right person to give it to, because money's kind of that taboo thing,
right,
that, so you just don't talk about it with some of your friends, and and you kind of have to know their interest level and learning before you're pushing a book on them. But
yeah,
the couple friends that have came to me and kind of asked how I got started or whatnot, like, I'm really quick to kind of pull that book out and say here you go. You know?
Dude, it's funny that you mentioned that. As far as pushing it on people and things like that, and when people come to you specifically for advice, a friend of mine actually that I don't know super well emailed me recently, and was kind of like, "Hey, I've been listening to your podcast, and it seems like you know a lot about money and have interest in finance and investing and stuff." And he said that he basically had $1,000, and what should he do with that money? He wants to start investing or something. So I might write him back. I haven't responded yet because I've been kind of busy, but I think I'm going to write him back and basically say, buy Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, buy Rich Dad Poor Dad, and maybe buy like one other book and start there. Don't take that money to an investment bank right away. Don't buy stocks right away. Just hold on to some of that money and invest, $50 in a couple of books, and really just start with your mindset, because it all does really start with the mindset.
Yeah.
Okay, so now going back, why did you pick real estate as opposed to starting with business or mutual funds or stocks or anything to start off with your investments?
I guess to make a really long story short, is that riding bikes for a living and being able to have these sponsors that kind of pay you to ride your bike, it is what it is. It kind of feels like you're getting paid to do nothing, because you are doing something, but you're out there doing what you love. But I've always just kind of felt like I'm getting checks in the mail, just because I feel like I was going to be out there riding flatland regardless, and I enjoy shooting flatland photos and I enjoy filming flatland videos. It's been a passion of mine since I was a kid. So the fact that I was able to make money from it felt like I really wasn't working. It just felt like, man, this is really turned into a dream job. So when I started to think, what's after flatland, like what can I do to supplement this income that's going to feel the exact same as what I feel now, and what I feel now from riding flatland, like I told you, is I feel like I'm not really working that hard for that money because of my obsession is still flatland, and I'm going to be doing it regardless. So real estate kind of fit into what I wanted to do, because it kind of feels the same. You buy a property and you just started getting checks in the mail. So it kind of felt the same, even though there's the whole aspect of having to save up for your down payment or save up for the property if you want to buy it cash or however you want to do it. You got to get there some way, but the end result kind of felt the same. then when I realized the more I had, the more it would give me that feeling is why I kept investing in real estate and why I still have interest in it today.
Yeah. So what were the beginning or early steps for you to learn about real estate?
I guess it was that trailer that I lived in. When I moved out the trailer, I had an option to sell the trailer or to rent it, and I wound up renting it. And when I started renting it, that's when I realized, like, man, this kind of feels the same as bike riding. You know, getting this check in the mail from the tenant. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of my intro to real estate, of knowing, like, man, this money coming in from the trailer is paying half of my house note that I have right now.
And just to back up a minute to fill people in listening, so you bought a trailer kind of with your own, contest and sponsor money when you were like 17 years old or something?
Yeah, I acquired the trailer from my mom. She actually helped me get the trailer and to kind of get me started, and get me started to have my own home, to get out the house. So I forgot what she did to get it, but I know when I got the trailer, we owed like $22,000 on it. And then from, contest winnings and, little sponsorship money, I had this goal of getting it paid off. So I wound up getting it paid off. And before I read that book, I was in that trailer, and honest to God, that I thought that was going to be my forever home before I read that book. And that was just kind of my mindset back then, is, I was thinking of different ways that I could make that trailer like hurricane proof, or make it my forever house. Like I was contemplating, like, I was getting quotes on bricks because I was going to brick around the trailer and that way that was going to be my forever home. And then when I read that book and started talking to some people that were like-minded and that had goals, I realized, man, maybe I don't want to be here. Maybe I kind of do want more for myself. And that's where it kind of spiraled to where it is today.
That's so funny, man. God damn, you've come a long way. So going back to kind of the initial question, so the trailer, which you got early on in life and you paid off and then you rented out, was sort of your intro, like, to learning about real estate investing. Were there other books or resources that you went to learn? I know for me, I read a lot of the Rich Dad Poor Dad stuff and a couple other like specific real estate books. So did you have any books or any people that you spoke to about this?
I can remember a conversation that I was having with Bobby Carter, and I don't know if you want to give an intro to Bobby or not, but Bobby's a flatland rider that has some pretty successful parents, and they've kind of passed down some knowledge to him just about finances. And I was talking to Bobby one day on the phone. At the time, I was still living in the trailer, and he was just kind of, I guess he had just read the book, and as simple as it is, he was just kind of talking to me and kind of giving me some knowledge on the three things that you can invest your money in, which is, a business, or, so investing in like a retail store, or a business, or starting a business, or you can invest in paper assets, which is your stocks and bonds, or, your real estate, whether that's flipping houses or buying houses as rentals. And, and those were assets. Mm-hmm. And then anything else you spend your money on is basically a liability if it's not putting money back in your pocket. So it was kind of like, as simple as it sounds, thinking back, it was kind of a time and a time where I just kind of like, it blew my mind, because I was like, he's so right. Like I'm over here worried about, saving up money to put airbags on my truck, or, new rims on my car, when I should be taking the money that comes in and buying only assets. So that was kind of a a turning point for me where every little bit of money that came in, I kind of assigned each dollar to a certain account, to where, you know, maybe that dollar was going to go into the account that was going to be for paying bills, but that other dollar that came in, it was going into another account to help me save for investments, which would be my assets that would bring money back in.
Mm-hmm. So how do you manage your money these days? Do you have like a strict budget and you still put every dollar under a certain account? Do you have someone that helps manage your money at all?
I manage everything myself. Obviously, I have Vanessa, my wife, helping me as well. But I've just kind of realized over the years, as crazy as it sounds, and a lot of my friends argue with me on this, is every time I open up a new account and have that account assigned for something, I begin to have more money. So basically, in a sense, is the more I manage my money, the more money I have to manage. Mm-hmm. You know, and because a lot of people, that's kind of their first initial thought, or their first initial thing that they say to me when I talk about buying a rental property or investing in real estate. They say, no, I can't do that because I don't have the money to do that. But really, the answer is I didn't have the money to do it either. But the moment I started managing my money well was the moment I was able to have more money to manage, which then gave me, the opportunities to invest in the things that I am in today.
So you talk about separate accounts and stuff, and I know you're really big on this, and I might be one of the ones that have given you a little bit of shit on this over the years, but I think it really works for you. So I think most people typically have maybe a savings and a checking account, right? Like 2 bank accounts. Maybe they have a third one that's savings for something different or whatever. Can you explain what accounts you have and what they're all for?
I was going to say, when I first started out, I didn't even know that I needed a checking and a savings account. I just had like one account I was running everything from. But the moment I realized I started, separating this money and giving every dollar a purpose was the kind of the point in time that I realized that, the more I manage this money, the more I'm not really spreading it thin. I'm just putting it into an account and then waiting for it to build to a point where I can do something with it. So to answer your question, I have just a checking account, which, is for paying all my bills, a savings account that's just like a normal savings account for whatever. Then there's a account that I have for taxes. Since I'm self-employed, I try to stick money in there throughout the year so I don't get hit with taxes really hard. At the end of the year, I'm kind of prepared for that, I guess you'd say. Then I have another account that's kind of like I guess you'd call it a play account, to where I stick money in there, and when I want to treat myself, it's kind of different than a savings account, because I treat it kind of like one day this account's going to have tons of money in it. So I want to kind of know what it feels like to have a lot of money. So I kind of go in that account and just, use it to buy something special for myself if I want. And then I have 2 separate accounts for our businesses. I have a real estate business with my wife, and then I have a real estate business with my partner. So I have those 2 accounts. And then I have my most important account that I have is my investing account. And that's the dollars that I assign to go into that account is the ones that are used to invest in the things that I want to invest in, which is right now 90% real estate.
Cool. So in that play account, can you give me an example of one thing that you've done to sort of treat yourself and sort of splurge and, go all out?
Take a vacation,
mm-hmm.
Go to, Vanessa and I like to go to those sandals resorts. So, we'll hit the Antigua. We're doing the Antigua next, but we did Jamaica, Bahamas, just those type of trips that, aren't BMX related, to where I'm not lugging a bike behind me in a bag, where I can kind of put down the bike and have just a fun little vacation trip without the bike.
Yeah. So you said about 90% of your investments right now are real estate. Can you give us a number of how many properties you own between your Adam's investment, which is you and your wife, and then Infinite Investments, which is you and your business partner, Kenny Barnes?
It's I believe it's over 20 at this point, maybe 21, 22.
I love that you're so nonchalant about not even really knowing the number of properties you have, because you have so many. That's freaking amazing, man. And as a friend of yours and somebody that draws motivation and inspiration from you, man, that's just so cool to hear that. And every time I talk with you, I just get so pumped to hear all the big things you're doing. So I kind of know about this relationship already, but I think it's a really interesting story. So can you tell me, I guess, and our listeners here, about your relationship with a guy named Ed Hoover?
I'll do that. But what were we just talking about a second ago? Because I had something to say about it, and I got sidetracked.
The number of properties you have, or maybe
it was the number. It was the number of properties. Okay. I wanted to say something. So, about, I guess, 3 or 4, 5 years ago, I don't know when I started investing in property, but I think I had like 3 or 4 properties or something. Vanessa's brother-in-law asked me, man, how many would you like to have before you stop? And like, what number do you want to have? And I remember telling him 20. And now I look back and I laugh, because that's at that time my mind frame was that I actually had a ceiling on how many that I could have. Mm-hmm. So in my mind at that particular moment, I thought there's no way I can have more than 20. So I'm just going to tell this guy I want to have 20. And he was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. You want to have 20. But now if someone were to ask me that question, I don't have a number, because I'm young and I want to acquire as much of this stuff as I can, to where, hopefully one day the dream is to turn it into something much, much larger. But I just had to say that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
The numbers. But what was your next question?
So the next question is, tell us about your relationship with Ed Hoover, and sort of how that relationship plays into your investments and your financial journey. So there's a parking lot here in my hometown that I started riding in, which is Hobby Lobby. And I'm sure tons of people have heard me talk about Hobby Lobby on Twitter or Instagram, or seen videos of me riding out there. But when I first started riding out there, it was in the early 2000s, or the early 2000s is when I got caught, I guess, by Ed Hoover. He pulled up in his truck, and I was just a kid with my pants sagging. I really kind of pushed the limits of how I wore my pants back then. I don't know if I was just trying to be cool or what, but I had my pants like below my butt. I got the flatland tattoo going across my stomach at the time, so I kind of really looked like a thug on a bike, just out there spinning circles. And he pulled up and said that I couldn't ride there. You can't ride here. And I told him, man, I've been riding here for years. The cops know me, and they don't care. And he said, well, it doesn't matter what the cops says. This is my property. And I said, oh, this isn't your property. And he said, it is my property, and you need to pull your damn pants up, and you need to get in your car and your bike, and you need to leave. And at that moment, I realized I knew about this huge compound in Hammond that a guy named Ed Hoover owned. And when I say compound, that's like the place that he lives, because it's just a big wall with, tons of properties of
tons of houses in there that he owns with his big, I guess you'd call mansion inside of there. I kind of had knew that a guy in Hammond owned a ton of property. And when he said that I own this, I pretty much knew that that was him. So really quickly, I pulled up my pants and kind of changed my attitude and said, man, this is what I do for a living. I kind of need this place to train every day. I travel around the world doing this, and I would really appreciate it if you let me train here, because this is the only spot that I have to ride. So he said, if you're serious and that's what you do for a living, come to my office at 7 a.m. in the morning, and I'll get you a notarized paper that says you can ride here. I'll have my secretary write it out, and that way, we're covered liability-wise if you get hurt. So I shook his hand, and the next day I showed up at his office at 7 a.m. and his secretary wrote me out a sheet saying I could ride there, and I still keep that same notarized laminated sheet in my car today, just in case a cop were to say something. But they never do. But since then, I've kept in good touch with Ed. It started off where he would just stop out in the parking lot and talk to me, and we became friends to the point now to where he is a board member at one of the local banks here. So he's a big reason why a lot of the loans that I've had in the past have been pushed through, and also a big reason why I chose a couple big financial decisions that I didn't do. He's a big reason for that. So I really have him to thank.
Yeah. And just to kind of give the listeners my perspective, I've sort of seen this relationship with you guys build over the years, just from us being friends. It was kind of cool. Like, I remember hearing about this laminated piece of paper and seeing it, many years ago. And then at a certain point, once you got into real estate, you were kind of like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I want to know more about this. I want to get smarter about money and stuff. I know, like, one of the biggest players in the area as far as real estate. So, you seized that opportunity and went to him and, almost got mentored by him in a way, which I think is a cool way to just view an opportunity and jump on it and make something out of it,
Yeah, it kind of turned into when, after I got the paper signed for me to ride out there as permission. At first, he would kind of stop out there and we would talk about, oh, where's your latest travels? And, what's the newest trick you've learned, or what's the latest contest you won? But then as I evolved as a person and wanted to be more involved in business, when he drove up, I would completely put the bike down, and those talks became more about, hey, what should I do? I'm in a situation with this investment, or what should I do with my money? Or one time in particular, I was really concerned about being secure. I didn't know how long any of these sponsors were gonna be paying me, and I had a lot of fear in me of what's gonna be next for after riding. So I had saved up this big bulk of cash, and I was actually about to pay my house off that I lived in, the first house that I bought, and I was really ready to do that. And he came up, and I just wanted to run it past him real fast, because I was kind of in that mind frame of wanting to be secure, and it's all I talked about at the time is I just want to be secure. I just want to make sure that after bike riding is done, that I have everything taken care of, and I don't want a chance losing my house. So when he came out there that one particular day, I kind of told him my plan was, hey, I'm about to pay my house off. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. What do you think? And he said, well, why would you want to do that? And I said, just to be secure, and because I don't know what's going to happen next. And he said, I'm 60 something years old, and I got 2 stents in my heart. Do you think I'm worried about being secure? He said, boy, you got to take chances in life, and you take that money and you keep investing it in real estate and rentals. And if you pay that house off, I will never talk to you again, and I will never give you any more advice, because that would be the dumbest, I guess, MFing move that you've ever done. So I had to then go back and tell Vanessa the new plan was to was to listen to Ed and keep investing that money in real estate. And I'm so glad that he pulled up there that day and told me not to pay that house off, because within 3 years of him telling me that, I had acquired a bunch of properties, and those properties were bringing in income, and I think back, man, what if I would have paid that house off back then? You know, mm-hmm. All that money would have just been tied up in the house, and no money would have been being generated at all. And then I wound up having to sell the house for less than what I bought it for. So I would have lost money in the end, you know?
Very interesting, man. I've got to ask, where does your motivation come from for business and investing? And also, second part to that question is, how has that changed over the years?
I guess my motivation today is realizing that the possibilities are endless. You know, riding flatland really made me realize that you know, it's an infinite art form. So flatland really makes you kind of realize a lot of things about life, I think. You know, you can literally go out and think of a trick that's never been done before in the world. And this is BMX in general, I guess. You know, a lot of people could relate to this that rides BMX. But it really kind of BMX made me realize that the possibilities are endless in life. So transferring over into business, BMX kind of made me realize that the possibilities are also endless with business. So knowing that I can keep acquiring more and more assets, which is basically acquiring more and more wealth, and knowing that there's not an end to it, it did kind of has became an obsession, my second obsession in life.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So knowing that you're obsessed with, you know, riding and BMX and that part of your career and investing now, how do you manage that sort of focus and that energy into two different things? And, you know, you've got your wife, you've got a family that, you know, you go see your mom on a regular basis, and still, how do you focus so much of your energy onto different things at such a high level? And I'm asking this kind of as a time management and mental, you know, space management, I guess, because for me, I'm so like hyper focused that it's really hard for me to put so much effort and energy into multiple things. Like I'm really good at focusing on one thing and, you know, doing something with that one specific thing. And I'll do that for months at a time, but it's hard for me to do that with multiple things. But I feel like you're really, really good at doing that with separate things.
I wouldn't say I'm really, really good at it. I just do my best, the best I can with it. You know, I know that, you know, some days riding the bike has to take a back seat, and I know that some days the business stuff kind of has to take a back seat. You know, specifically if I know a contest is coming up or a big show is coming up, you know I kind of need to be on the bike and be fluent to feel one with the bike, or however you want to say it, you know, to feel really dialed. But, you know, there's other times when I do have to kind of devote my time to my businesses, because if I don't want them to fail either, you know.
So who are the people, besides myself, I guess, since I already mentioned that we talk quite a bit, who are the people that you talk to on a regular basis in order to either learn more or stay motivated or keep getting inspired?
My business partner, Kenny Barnes, I met him through, he manages property in my town, and at the current moment he manages like up to like 500 properties. I had went to him And to make a long story short, I went to him and for some advice on helping me manage the properties that I have. And through that relationship became a partnership. And now I talk to him on a daily basis about kind of what our next moves are, what we're going to do to stay motivated, to keep going, and what our goals are for the future. So he's been a big motivation to me, and I'm super thankful to have met him and became his partner, because his knowledge runs really, really deep. And our main goal with Kenny and I's company is to not only, build what we have to something large, but to kind of help others along the way. So, no matter how much we have going on, or no matter, how much we don't know, we're still willing to kind of sit down and speak with like-minded individuals that might want to learn and know everything we know on where we got to where we are right now. Because obviously we don't know everything. We're still learning every day, but there's a lot of people out there that are really successful at things, and they don't want to tell you how they got there. And that's kind of the opposite of how we want to be, moving forward, and how we've been. As we want to do well and we want to be successful, but we also want to, sit down with kids or whoever else that want to learn, to just let them know everything we've done and the mistakes that we've made. So that way, if we can be a help to them, then hell, that feels a lot better sometimes than the actual making the investment, to knowing that, man, we made a mistake here. Let's sit down with this person and tell them what not to do, because it cost us, a handful of money, because we had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. So I know you are short on time, and I've got a meeting coming up myself as well. So we're going to start wrapping this up with a handful of quick hit questions. So obviously you've got a lot going on. You ride, you've got your businesses, you've got your family. How do you decompress?
I watch Ellen DeGeneres at night, and Harry Potter, and eat olives and cheesecake.
I love it, man. I love it. When do you feel like you get hit by inspiration or ideas the most?
When I'm sitting on an airplane.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
I don't know, man. When I'm on an airplane, I'm kind of like, I got my iPad in front of me, and I'm kind of looking over. That's my time to kind of look over all my yearly goals and see where I'm at, and see if I've hit a couple of them, or see if I want to add a few more. So, and it's just a time to where, like, there's not much. My phone's on airplane mode. I can't really talk or text to anyone. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of my time to, by the time I get off that airplane, I'm kind of making some phone calls, because I've gotten some ideas or some motivation on what I want to do next.
Yeah. So we've talked about a couple of people during the show. We've talked about Bobby Carter, who is a mutual friend that recommended a book to change your life. We've talked about your business partner, Kenny Barnes. We've talked about Ed Hoover, who is a big-time real estate player in the area that sort of became a bit of a mentor for you. So aside from those people, can you give an example of when you've modeled yourself after someone else's success? Like maybe you've seen someone else who you considered to be successful, and you've tried to replicate some of their habits or traits or patterns in order to achieve some success yourself.
The name that comes to mind, and I know it's I don't want to say cliche, but maybe I got to say Dave Mira. There was a time in my career where I didn't know, and Dave probably doesn't even remember this, and sometimes I often wonder, does he remember? But there was a time where I was a little bit confused on the business side of BMX and how I should go about it. Mm-hmm. So I was probably 17 years old at the time, and someone told Dave that I had a couple questions for him about the business side of BMX, and I was living at the trailer, and I'll never forget that phone call, man, because it lasted about 15 minutes, and everything that he told me on that phone call is how I kind of ran my quote unquote BMX business after that. So I'm really thankful for that. And like I said, sometimes I wonder if he even remembers making that phone call to me, because it meant a lot to me, and it was super impactful. And after that phone call, I mean, I followed everything he did before, but after that phone call, I really kind of dug deep into everything that he's done. And obviously he's one of the raddest dudes, I think, that was successful in BMX.
Do you remember anything specific from that phone call that you can kind of replay for us?
I remember a couple things that he told me that kind of stuck. That was to just be myself, and don't stray from being myself in the industry. Don't try to don't follow trends, and that's how you're going to stand out, and that's how people are going to remember you in the industry. If that's my style, to go out and self-promote myself, then keep self-promoting myself, because that's kind of been a big thing in Flatland for me, is that I kind of realized early on that, if you're going to make a living through Flatland and having sponsors, you can't really be that core guy that sits back and doesn't want to put yourself out there. I mean, everything I got, I asked for. I asked for those covers that I got, and I even campaigned for myself to get one of those NORA Cups, and thinking back, I don't regret it at all, because that's just kind of my personality. And Dave kind of told me, just stick to you, man. Don't follow trends. If you want to be the self promoter, then be the self promoter, and see where that gets you.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome, man. So since we're on the topic of Dave Mirra, I did an interview with him for episode 11 of this show that I know that you listened to. Just a quick plug. Would you mind telling people what you thought about that interview, so that maybe they go back and click on it if they haven't heard it?
I was very, very stoked about it, because he speaks about doing the Ironmans and doing the marathons as being his second life, and it's so true and so inspiring, because he did so much in BMX, and I don't want to say he walked away from it or put words in his mouth, because he kind of worded that in his own way, but to have an exit strategy like he did, and then to move on to something else and have the same, if not more, discipline to what he's doing now, it was just like, it was mind-blowing to me. It was 100% mind-blowing. And I'm not a guy that's like super into running or marathons or fitness, but it intrigued me, because I know the other aspect of Dave, the BMX side. So to hear him talk about his new passion and stuff was pretty awesome. So listen to that.
Yeah, thanks for co-signing on that. I remember I think I sent you like a private link to it before it went live, because you were so anxious to hear it, and you called me afterwards and were just like raving about it, and it really meant a lot to me. So thank you for that. So we're going to wrap up with the final question that I ask everybody, which is, do you have a favorite quote or a favorite piece of advice that someone has given you?
I would say reach for the stars, because you're at least going to hit the moon. Because a lot of people out there, are not say a lot of people, but there's individuals out there that aren't reaching too high, because maybe they think that they're not going to get somewhere. But I say just reach as high as you can get, and you're going to get somewhere.
Awesome. Cool. So I know, we're just about out of time, so we're going to wrap up there. Please tell people where you would like them to go to find out more about you, connect with you on your social networks, so on and so forth.
My Instagram is at Terry Adams BMX. My Twitter is at Terry Adams BMX, which I don't tweet that much, but and then you can find me on Facebook just by searching like Terry Adams fan page, I guess.
Awesome. And you guys can follow my social networks. Those are all at Fat Tony BMX, and my personal site is also fattonybmx.com. You can go to the show's website at theexpansionprojectpodcast.com. Again, I apologize. I apologize every show. I hate that the URL is so long. Theexpansionprojectpodcast.com. But go there. On the right-hand side, there's some links that will get you 20% off of Nutrisuma products from Nutrisuma.com. Use the promo code FATTONY1 for 20% off. There's also a link to Chef Kate's Nut Butter. You can use the promo code FAT15 on ChefKates.com for 15% off of all of her delicious products. And there's an Amazon link there. Click on that, order stuff from Amazon. It's going to help out the show, but it's not going to cost you anything extra. While you're there, please go ahead and subscribe to the show, either on iTunes or Stitcher, so that you don't miss any of the episodes. And what would really mean a lot to me, guys, is if you go to the iTunes page, give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review. And again, this isn't a review that's just going to make me feel good about myself, although I do love hearing your feedback. What the review does is that it helps get the show bumped up into the iTunes rankings so that when people are searching for shows about business, about mindset, about investing, about sports, whatever, they're going to find this show, and we're going to turn some more people on and hopefully motivate and inspire that many more people. And of course, if you were able to take anything away from this episode at all, if you've learned anything, if you've been intrigued or inspired, please tell a friend. That is really the only marketing I have right now, is just you guys spreading the word by word of mouth or through your social networks. So tell people and let them know what you thought. And that is going to do it. So on behalf of myself and Terry Adams, thank you guys so much for joining us. And Terry, thanks again for you joining me, and I will talk to you real soon.
All right. Thank you.